Hello everyone, hope all are doing well. It's been a long time. I couldn't able to share any content related to oil field. However, I'm back now. I'm here with some of the solid knowledge transfers through my key learnings which I've got in my 4 years of entrepreneurial journey in building one of the most inevitable oil and energy company. And today we'll have a quick deep dive on offshore oil industry. We'll talk more about the offshore oil rigs and platforms. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, before getting into our today's topic on offshore oil rigs and platform, I would like to give a quick introduction on oil industry to our viewers who are new to the oil field. So yes, friends, to understand in simple words about oil industry, see, oil is a major commodity for all the economies, no matter it's a small economy or big economy. Oil dependency decides everything because this particular commodity has a direct impact on your transportation, direct impact on your power production, direct impact on your other manufacturing segments. Why I say as another manufacturing segment? Because starting from the manufacturing of the plastics and everything that is surrounding you, that involves a byproduct that is extracted from crude oil. The best example is even cosmetics has a byproduct that is extracted from crude oil. That is why it becomes more critical for an economy, and being an energy independent, it directly relevant to having a lot of energy reserve through crude oil and also by means of other production as well. So now the criticality in oil industry, it comes through the ways it is extracted and where exactly the crude oil is available. See, the crude oil is available in some of the barren deserts and also in the middle of the ocean. So that's where the extraction process gets completely different, and also its geological condition determines its extraction process, the production process, etc., etc., etc. That's how it's basically all the parameters it happens. So now we will be getting into more into offshore oil industry, and we'll discuss more on why does an offshore oil industry has become more expensive and more critical as well. Yes, friends, to understand about offshore oil industry, it's very important to know about the oil economics. We as an entrepreneur, we know how does a cost plays an essential factor in terms of manufacturing and in terms of product development as well. So over here, to understand about oil economics, there is two major factors. One, the global oil prices, and second, the production cost. I mean the oil production cost. There are two different cases over here. The global oil prices are fixed price. That's a standard price with which the oil gets traded between the countries. But the cost of producing the oil is completely different between different countries. And even in the same country, let's take a country called Apple. So Apple, the northern region of Apple, production cost is $10,000. But the southern region of Apple, the production cost is $15,000. So there is a complete difference. So here the economics plays a critical part. So when the demand shoots up, the oil producing countries will go for increasing the production. If the demand goes down, ideally they would not recommend producing from southern part of Apple. So they would only prefer producing from the northern part of Apple because the economics make sense. But in some case, when the demand goes very high and also the global price is way higher than the production cost, that's where the companies goes on producing the offshore reserves. Now let's try understand this with an example. Yes, friends, to understand this with an example, let's consider the 5 major parameters. One, our example country, which we have Apple. So the production cost of Apple in its land reserve is $30, the assumption 1. And the assumption 2 is the production cost of Apple in its offshore reserve, which is $65. And then let's get into the it's not an assumption, it's an actual scenario which has happened in 2008 and 2015. The oil price in 2008 is $147 and the oil price in 2015 is $52. And the assumption 5 is there is no natural calamity and there is no any other challenges which is going to happen in our example country and also in the industry, so the price doesn't get changed. So these are the 5 major assumptions. With this assumption, let's get into the case 1 of 2015. In 2015, the global oil price is $52, and in this case, in our example country, which is basically Apple, so in Apple, all the E&P companies in Apple would love to explore the land reserve because the production cost is just $30, considering our assumption. So that would make more profitable for the E&P companies and also for the national oil companies to explore the land reserve and to cater the in-country demand. But if you look after the offshore reserve, ideally they would not prefer because it's not even gonna get their break-even point. So ideally the economy gets plummet over here. So this is the scenario in 2015, which there is no gateway for offshore industry. But when you take the example of 2008, the global oil price is around $147, which is super high, in fact. And in that case, considering our assumption of production cost in land is $30 and the production cost in offshore region is $65. So ideally, the companies in Apple, the country called Apple, so over there, the E&P companies would love to go invest in their offshore reserves and start exploring the offshore reserves because the production cost in offshore is $65 and the global market price is $147, which is super price. And ultimately, a good time for the E&P companies to start exploring and start investing in the offshore reserve. That's where the roadway for offshore oil industry. That's where all these things were happening in the last 5 decades. If you could see, the whole offshore industry got evolved in the last 5 decades since 1967. Since then, all the offshore industry just got booming up. So yes, friends, getting into the offshore oil industry, you must have heard a lot more about the wages in offshore oil industry and blah, 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 a lot of perks and everything. But other than that, there are a few more important attributes that you should be knowing about offshore oil industry. First and foremost thing, there is an asset called rigs, the offshore oil rigs, which has different types starting from jackup rigs, semi-submersible rigs, and also the drill ships. These are put in place based on the depth of the ocean. So if the oil field is in the shallow side, then the jackup rigs are used. If it's in the pretty much in the deeper side of the ocean, then the semi-submersible rigs are used. If it's like way more deeper, then drill ships comes into the picture. So that's how these assets are used. And once they find a major reserve, if the reserve seems to be more proven after drilling the wildcat well, so over there they start building a solid oil production platform, which is put up in that particular location for years and years and years. There are some very good examples when you take about India. There is Bombay High offshore field. There is a production platform that has been there for more than a couple of decades. Similarly, if you could take on the northern North Sea, there are a lot of platforms, and the nearest port for the North Sea is Aberdeen. So a lot of choppers fly out and fly in, fly out, day in, day out. It's happening. There are like shuttling companies which owning a 500 more fleet of helicopters just to shuttle the oil field workers from the Aberdeen port to the North Sea. So that is how much the traffic is. Other than that, the most fancy thing that you must have heard about is the wages. Yes, the wages in offshore oil industry is pretty much higher compared to the cost that is happening in the land side because of risk and also the challenges that the incumbents face in offshore oil platforms. The wages are pretty much high. On top of their wages, there are something called rotations. So there are different rotations, 21 days on, 21 days off, 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off, something like, based on the contracts, how it has been signed. Accordingly, the rotation comes for the field engineers in offshore. So it's more into the operational roles, and the most frequently used contracts in offshore field is basically the international commute contract, where basically the oil field service companies and operators and drilling contractors, put their workers in place on like 30 days on and 30 days off on commuting contract. So this is how ideally the offshore industry works. It's pretty much more calculative segment because, an oil rig can, host only 120 or something like that. It has a fixed capacity. So more than that, it cannot host the people. So it's very much calculative. And it has a lot of risk as well because, everything can be calculated, but the nature is completely unpredictable. If you could take up the history in 1970s, there were like a lot of oil production platforms that was just caught in vain due to the hurricanes. So it has just put up a lot of oil companies billions of dollars in loss. So because, you cannot predict or you cannot control the nature. It's completely uncontrollable. It's all on the Mother Earth. So that's how the whole scenario is all about. And at the same time, the criticality in offshore industry is super, super, super critical, because the formations in offshore reserves are like completely complex. It's more deeper and it's high pressure and high temperature in most of the cases. So when the well blows out, it's nothing is in control. The very good example is Deepwater Horizon, the well, I mean the reserve which was owned by BP. So that was a very good example, and there is a movie also which you can watch out, and that would give you a live kind of a real time experience in terms of the offshore experience. You know what happens when the well blows out. It's completely uncontrollable. So that was a one good example. And more about the offshore oil industry is like, it's primarily on its criticality. So that's all about for today, and we'll be discussing more. If any questions on the offshore oil industry, so you're most welcome to put some comments on it, and also do put some like and subscribe. We'll be having a lot more videos on it, and I'm going to share a lot more information on the entrepreneurship journey in oil industry as well. So see you soon in the next video. Take care. Have a good day. Bye bye. Cheers.